The Oracle of Luna is a podcast with me, Bridget Engels, as your host. Here we have conversations with real live, present-day goddesses who are actively and courageously doing their magical work in the world. Each episode is a bewitching journey with relevant discussions on topics such as Wiccan pagan spirituality, writing, culture, magical practices, art, ritual, and the craft in its many forms. Merry meet! Welcome to another episode of the Oracle of Luna podcast. I'm Bridget Engels, your host, and today I'm thrilled to chat with Leeza Robertson. Leeza is a best-selling author with Llewellyn Worldwide, who has published several books and tarot decks. Some of her many tarot decks and books include Soul Cats Tarot, Mermaid Tarot, The Book of Mermaid Magic, Animal Totem Tarot, Cirque du Tarot, Pathworking Tarot, and Tarot Priestess, using the cards to heal, grow, and serve. She is from the Aussie bush, living her best life in Las Vegas. Welcome, Leeza.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited to chat with you. How are you doing today?
I am very, very glad that the heat has now left the Las Vegas desert.
Me too. That was 5 months of summer.
That was intense.
It was very intense. Yay. So we're heading into the dark time of the year, and what a beautiful time to connect with tarot. So I'm just excited to unpack all these questions I have for you. So are you ready?
Let's do it.
All righty. So first off, how did your spiritual path with a goddess begin? Can you tell us a little bit about your early spiritual beginnings and how you began to connect with divine feminine wisdom?
Well, I'm not really a spiritual seeker. And I know that might sound bizarre to people, but if any of your listeners have ever heard me interviewed before, they'll have heard me say I'm the least spiritual person. So my journey with the goddess was contentious at the very best.
And where did you grow up? Tell us a little bit about yourself. I know you're from Australia.
Yeah, I grew up in the Australian bush, in a very, very, very small country community. I think like at the time of my birth, there was maybe less than 4,000 people in the area that I grew up in. And then after I finished high school, I moved to the city and went to university at Melbourne University. Then after that, I went to Singapore and I worked for the Ministry of Education for a little while.
Hmm.
So I have been around. I have done some things, but yeah, my primary focus has always been in academia, and I've worked very extensively in education, curriculum, planning, assessing, and all those good things.
Oh, interesting. So how did you start weaving your spiritual path, or who influenced you maybe as you began your spiritual journey?
Yeah, I didn't actually begin a spiritual journey so much as it was thrust upon me. I
Okay.
really am not, even to this day, I'm really not a spirit seeker. I'm a researcher. But the person who kind of opened this particular world up to me was my wife. She was very much into spirituality, and she was very much a part of the New Age community when I met her. And to be honest, I thought it was the biggest load of rubbish I had ever heard in my life.
Oh, oh, really? So by force, really? You learned you became spiritual by force?
Well, actually, I still don't think of myself as a spiritual person. I think
Okay.
that's the interesting thing about it. I don't think of myself as a very spiritual person. I actually got into this because I was actually very sick. So when I moved to the States, I had a lot of health issues, and my body had started to shut down on itself. I'd had pneumonia for the seventh time. The
Ooh.
fluid wasn't leaving my body. My personal doctor back home in Australia had actually run out of things to do. Like they just didn't know. I'd had every test known to man. I'd been on um, very experimental medication. Nothing had worked. And when I moved over here, my wife, she's my wife now. She obviously wasn't my wife at the time, but she begged me to go and have a Reiki session. Like she literally begged me. She was sitting in bed, she was crying. She's like, please, please, please go try this. She says, I know you're
Yeah.
an academic and I know you're very logical, but please go and try this. So I went and had a Reiki session, and all of a sudden my swelling didn't feel so bad. So I was like, well, if I'm gonna jump into this, I'm gonna fully commit because that's just the type of person I am. I'm either all in or I'm not in at all. So I went every week for a year and my body healed. And at that point, I was like, maybe there's something to this rubbish
Oh.
after all. So let me explore it further.
Huh. And so, how did you become an author and connect to the significance of words and stories in your life?
By sheer accident.
Tell us about that.
Again, again, it wasn't anything that I had planned to do. Uh, I've really been forced into this world through my guides and through the goddess and all of the things that we kind of consider living in the non-physical realm. Like I'm absolutely positive of this. Like they just block me at every turn and just be like, nope, you're going back in. So
Huh.
I got into tarot because I lost my eyesight. I lost my
Oh,
eyesight for a little while due to a
really?
sinus infection.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I had a
Oh.
really bad sinus infection and it took my eyesight out. I had severe light sensitivity. Our house had to be shrouded in darkness, which was really horrible for my wife because she loves sunlight and it was really hard for her. But I couldn't see, I couldn't function, like I was fumbling around in the house all the time. And I started dreaming of tarot cards. Like they were the only things I could see in the darkness, as I could see these cards, and they would come with names attached. So like I'd had a friend who was into this field, and I was telling her, last night while I was laying there in the dark because I can't see anything, your name flashed up and I saw this, this, and this. Does it mean anything to you? And she's like, oh my God, yeah, that's exactly what I'm going through right now. So that was kind of how I got thrust into tarot. And along that journey, because as I said, I'm an all or nothing type person, I was attending an event that Barbara Moore was doing. And maybe some of your younger listeners may not know who Barbara Moore is, but Barbara Moore is one of the matriarchs of tarot, along with Rachel Pollack and Mary Greer. She's the acquisitions officer at Llewellyn. She pretty much
Mhm.
shapes the world of tarot, to be honest.
Hmm.
And I was at one of her workshops and she was teaching this really fascinating spread. And I asked her, I said, listen, if can I do a private lesson with you about this? Because I'm really fascinated by it. Just like, sure, I'll send you an invoice. So we did the lesson and we got chatting, and she just asked me a little bit about myself, and the rest is now history.
Mm-hmm. Yes, so you are very prolific. You've published a lot of tarot decks. What was your first one, and how did that feel to you?
The very first deck was Animal Totem Tarot. That was the very first one. 2026 will be its 10-year anniversary, which is wild to think about.
Oh, wow.
And that one was actually really fun because I was working with animal energy at the time. That's actually how I got into it because Barbara was talking to me about that stuff and she asked me if I'd ever thought of doing a tarot deck. And I was like, no, what are you crazy? And 2 years later, it was out.
Yeah.
So that was my first one, and I have done seven since.
Yeah, that's a lot. You must really like it. And you partner with a illustrator or different illustrators?
So what happens with Llewellyn is you get the opportunity to work alongside an artist.
Uh,
The deck creator themselves creates the entire deck, and that includes all the artist briefs. So you basically have to be able to see the deck before the deck even exists. That's just how it works. You've literally got to be able to see all 78 images and then write them out in this
wow.
artist brief. And then Llewellyn helps find an artist, and you get together, and then the artist somehow gets inside of your head and creates these amazing art images, and then you get a deck. But yeah, the process is phenomenal. I love it. I love the idea of telling the same story again and again and again, but each time we tell it differently. So we're
Mm-hmm.
talking to different people, and we're getting different people energized and excited about the story that is tarot. So yeah, the decks, I love creating them. They're a lot of fun.
Yeah, I can tell. It's so many tarot decks out there. You must really feel passionate about it. And also, you have a book, several books that I have been reading called Tarot Priestess, Using the Cards to Heal, Grow, and Serve. Can you tell us a little bit about what inspired you to write that book or this book?
So interesting story about when this book came out, and it feels so relevant like right here, right now in the US. But Tarot Priestess actually came out the same time Roe versus Wade was overturned.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I was on a podcast interview when that happened, and I was like, this seems this seems about right. But the reason I wrote that book is because I identify as a priestess and not as a witch. And noticed that there was not a lot of information out there for those of us that were on the priestess path. There's a lot of books that are written for people who are on the witch path, but not so much the priestess path. It's like this
Mm-hmm.
particular lineage for women has been somewhat neglected or it's misunderstood.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Yeah.
was like, I really feel called to add something to the marketplace here around this particular path that so many women are walking.
Mm-hmm. And then how did you feel about combining tarot with priestessing? And can tarot be a devotional practice to the goddess?
Absolutely. I think that was one of the things that was so fascinating to me as I was doing the research and putting it all together was how much divination practices in general are part of the priestess path. So in that nature, of course, cartomancy as well, which is what tarot is a part of, is definitely a part of a ritualistic practice towards the goddess. And we know this is true because how many goddess oracle decks are there out there? I mean, there's
Oh,
tons
yeah.
of them. So we know we know that
Yeah.
this is something that people are drawn to. And I think that's one of the things I'm really passionate about too, is exploring the connection between the goddess and the priestess path. As I said, there's a lot of stuff about the goddess and the path of the witch, but the devotional aspect of the priestess, the sacred space that a priestess holds, is very different from the path of the witch. And being able to kind of bring that forth and talk to people about that, that's kind of like what gets me excited.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I noticed in the book that you have different gates and there's different goddesses associated with them. Got four different temples representing like the four different elements and four different goddesses. I thought that was pretty cool. Unique way to kind of create a deck.
The hardest one was Danu. Oh man, she kicked my ass. Like she was she
Why?
was
Why? What
she
did she
was
do?
she just would not give up information easily. Like she made me work for every word, every prayer, every exercise, every vision. She really put me through the ringer. The one that was the easiest to write was definitely the Priestesses of Avalon. The
Mm-hmm.
flow with them was amazing. In fact, it was like I was transported when I wrote that particular chapter.
Mm.
But Danu, no, whew, she made me work.
Tell us a little bit about Denu. I had the privilege of attending a few of your goddess meditation events here in Las Vegas, and the last one I attended, Mhm. Was with the goddess Danu, and it was very powerful. So, yeah, let's explore that a little bit. How do you think Danu was challenging you, or why?
I think she was challenging me because at the time I was moving really fast. I was on a lot of deadlines. The year I was writing Tarot Priestess was also a year that I had five other projects going. I released five publications within 3 years. It was really,
Uh,
really crazy.
wow.
And Danu is uh, connected to the earth, so she's very slow. There's a slowness and stillness to her. And it has been interesting in hindsight when I look back on when she very first appeared to me in the river waters in Zion National Park. It
Hmm.
was it was actually a bit of a foreboding of like what was going to happen because I was moving too fast and I did actually burn out about a year later. And so I think that was why she was so challenging because I was up against so many deadlines. I was trying to get things done. My schedule was jammed, and she moves so slow.
Hmm.
And her whole energy is about stillness and slowness, and how that is the key to creation and that is the key to success. And at the time I was writing that book, I was not in a place to hear that at all. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Moving so fast and yeah, having so many deadlines. Yeah, I could see where that would be challenging to connect with a very ancient, slow Celtic. She's a Celtic goddess, right?
Celtic goddess, yes.
Mm. And also water. She's also a goddess of water and waterfalls and rivers.
Yes. And as I said, she presented herself to me in the river. I was sitting on the rocks um, in Zion Canyon, and I think it was like the first day I'd taken off in must have been 2 years. And I was just sitting there and I was thinking about how amazing it felt just to stop for a minute. And then there she was, like right in
Mhm.
front of me. They're in the middle of the river. And the water, she was diverting the water around her in a totally different way. And I was looking around to be like, can anyone else see this? Like, what is going on here? And I was the only person there. And she just kept staring at me, like staring into my soul. That moment that you have with the goddess, and she just peers deep into your soul and your heart, and like you feel it from the top of your head to the
Hmm.
tips of your toes.
It stops
That's what
you.
it was
Hmm.
like. That's what it was like. And it was like that for about a good 5 minutes, I would say. And then she was gone. Like I blinked and she was gone. But as I said, in hindsight, when I look back on that, that was she was trying to warn me to slow down. She
Yeah.
was trying to warn me that she was trying to show me with the actual water itself that the earth has
Mhm.
the power to divert even the strongest current and the strongest flow, that when we can slow down, we can change where things move to. But as I said, I just was not in a place to receive that message at the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, no, you actually, it's beautiful the way you've written it in the book. And I was going to say for me personally that tarot can slow us down. I mean, for me personally, I feel like when I'm working with tarot once or twice a week, and it really slows me down and it centers me. And that in itself is a devotional practice to the goddess, I feel like.
Yeah, there's something really special about sitting down and communicating with a goddess through the art of cartomancy. Now, whether that's oracle cards or tarot is a personal choice. I often will use both.
You've published both Oracle and Tarot decks?
No, I have
Just
only
Tarot.
done
Okay.
tarot.
Got it. Okay.
I want to do oracle decks, but my publisher doesn't do them.
Oh, okay.
And I haven't had the time. I haven't had the time to actually like think about creating a different project and pitching it to another publishing house. So,
Sure.
um, but yes, for sh definitely, if we can create space for communication with the goddess through our cards, that is a very slowed down process. It's a
Yeah.
process where we have to be present, we have to be still, we have to be open, and we have to surrender. And
Mm-hmm.
that is a very stillness practice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, being receptive is a very divine feminine attribute, and being open to her wisdom can really connect us to actually our power. How do you feel like we can connect for some of our listeners who are not tarot readers or oracle deck readers? how can they connect with in the present time, wherever they are, with divine feminine wisdom?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question because not everyone's into cartomancy,
Yeah.
but I think that like you can do it from a couple of different things. Obviously, if you have a ritualistic process, then you could do it with lighting a candle and just sitting and watching the candle flame for a couple of minutes. I always tell people if you're at the very beginning of your practice, just set a timer for 2 minutes and just sit still for 2 minutes. You could do it with crystals. I have a client who used to have this well, not used to have, she still has this very big bowl of tumbled stones. And each morning she would take a breath and she would ask the goddess, what is my message today? And she'd pull out a crystal, and her crystal would be her oracle of the day. And that was how she
Yeah.
was connecting with it. We can do it with flowers, with trees. You know, nature is the best place to be with the goddess. And to be honest, that was my path into the goddess. I struggled a lot with the whole divine feminine theory stuff. I felt that it was very straight centered. There wasn't
Hmm.
a lot of material out there for queer women,
Hmm.
and I really had a lot of problems with it. So the book that really helped me a lot was by Rachel Pollack, and that was a lot more about ancient practices of the goddess in the landscape and looking for the goddess in nature and seeing her as this sacred space of growth and success and building. And that shifted everything for me. So I
Mm.
think like if you're having difficulty leaning into what does divine feminine energy mean, or you feel that divine feminine practice actually doesn't include you,
Hmm.
I want to say it does, but you might have to look somewhere else for it. You might just have to find the right teacher with the
Hmm.
right gateway, with the right information.
Hmm. Right. And being in nature is very sacred, and slowing down, connecting with plants, connecting with trees, rocks, the elements can really inspire us and, connect us to our spirituality. I was going to ask you, what's the Rachel Pollack book that you liked?
The body of the goddess.
Okay. Just going to ask you, Australia has got some pretty dramatic landscape. Did that influence you?
Well, I wasn't living in Australia at the time, so no.
Oh, but growing up, I mean, were you a nature lover growing up at all?
No,
Okay.
I don't think that was the case at all.
Okay.
I don't think that was the case at all. No, growing up, all I could think about was getting out of getting out of Hicksville and moving to the city and bettering my life. Like that, I was an
Yeah.
escape artist.
What made you decide to live in Las Vegas? I was just curious.
Well, this is where my wife is.
Oh,
This
got
is
it.
where she was. So,
I
like,
see. I see.
yeah.
Okay. So, what are some of your upcoming plans for the future? Do you have any new tarot decks or books or events or workshops coming up?
All of the above. Okay, so let's see if we can do these one at a time. Yes, I have a new deck coming out next year, next summer to be precise, the Celestial Unicorn Tarot. Very
Mm.
excited about this deck. This is a deck that actually took quite a few years to get going because the person that I co-created with, I had to convince them to make a tarot deck. They didn't want to make a tarot deck. So I
Oh.
spent 2 years convincing them that this was going to be a really good idea. So then, once I finally convinced Callista to like come on board and create this deck, then it took Eugene, our artist, about another 2.5 years to do the artwork. So,
Wow.
tarot projects are a long-term investment. They're not things like if you're going to do them properly at a professional level so that they are world-class decks, and by that I mean they can be sold across the globe, then they do take a lot of time. They're not these things that we sit around and quickly just flick out. There's a lot of thought and a lot of art and a lot of creative energy that goes into holding these projects and holding them energetically for the entire creation process. So
Mm.
we're really excited about that. That comes out in summer 2025. The next book I haven't started writing yet, but there are two more books in the funnel. So there's another tarot book and then there's a numerology book. So they're in the funnel,
Hmm.
but don't have release dates for those yet. Workshops and classes, yes, I do. Obviously, I do my monthly Goddess Circle in person here in Las Vegas at Enchanted Forest Reiki. We
Mm-hmm.
do that every month, and every month we work with a different goddess. We are making our way through the dark goddesses right now because it is the darker months here in the Northern Hemisphere. And then I have a private one-to-one coaching program, which is called the Inner Temple. And this is for people who want to get closer to their own spiritual practice and figure out what that means for them and how do they incorporate them, a spiritual practice into their life. And really it's for people who have been burnt out and they're looking for a new way to exist and enjoy peace and calm and play and fun. So yeah, there's always lots going
Hmm.
on.
Oh, is that an online thing, the Inner Temple?
The Inner Temple is it's one-to-one. So it's actually with me personally. So we talk, we have a meeting over Zoom once a month where we sit and we chat and I look through all the chakras and we plan for the month ahead and then we chat every day through WhatsApp, depending on what kind of program or what they feel best path for them. And I am about to launch my Deck Creators 12-month program as well for people who are feeling the pull to create their own deck for their own work and their own clients. So yes, always lots going on with me.
Wonderful. Do you have a website or blog where people can learn more about you and your tarot decks and books?
Absolutely. The website is actually down at the moment because it's being rebuilt. So the best place for people to get in touch with me, to be perfectly honest, is going to be Instagram. It is the one place that I do show up on a consistent basis. So on Instagram, I am at the Leeza Robertson.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Leeza, for coming on the show. Thank you for all your prolific tarot decks and books that align us with the divine and inspire us to connect with our spirituality. So, thank you again. And thank you to all our listeners for joining us.
You are most welcome. Always a
Yeah.
pleasure.
Yes. Blessed be. Bye bye. perspectives and research on the Salem witch hunts and your